Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Good morning. When I keep remembering, I always remember the time I was bringing Francesca up here for her first interview. And as we approached this very beautiful building, I kept thinking, I know this place. I know this place. What is this? And then we went into Master's Hall, and I said, I feel so familiar in here. And then it hit me. I remembered. I'm bad. I'm bad. I'm really, really bad. Michael Jackson's Bad. We shot it here. We shot it here, the whole first section of the film, the dramatic section. And that was 33 years ago, guys. And this is where we shot the film of that song. That was in 1985. And as they say, it was like deja vu all over again. And I felt that was sort of a good omen, you know. And some of you, know I make movies, of course, but some of you might have seen some of them. Some of you might have seen a few that you shouldn't have seen. And maybe your parents wouldn't have really enjoyed you seeing them, but some of you have probably been watching them on your iPhone right now, or your iWatch, Well, I know that you haven't officially graduated yet, but I want to welcome you to the great undiscovered country that is this very special time in your life. That's between high school and college. That's the time between the end of being a child and the beginning of being an adult. And I'm 75, I've almost made it. But this is the first step, right here. And it's a special time because it's wide open. Everything is possible. And if it makes you a little nervous, unsettled, or you feel you're not up for it, or you're lost, you feel adrift maybe, I will tell you that everything's going to be okay. And if you think you're alone with those feelings, I'll tell you that you are not. Some of you, I know, many I don't. I don't know what who you are or what you want to achieve or, how you see your life. You may want to go into law, music, medicine. Some of you might not know what you want. And some might just have kind of a vague idea of what you want to do. Or some might even want to do something crazy, impossible. And some of you might want to make movies, like I did. So, look, the only way I can really speak to you, the one thing I can do, the only thing I can do, is to speak to you from my own experience of this time in my life. So, I'm a filmmaker. That's what people think of when they meet me, filmmaker. But I wasn't born a filmmaker. And when you come face to face with an old person like myself, you might think of me as what I do, period, filmmaker, like ready-made, But that's just the first impression. You don't tend to think of someone's history or how they got there. And I have to tell you that I got where I needed to go the same way we all get there. We all have to find our own way, one step at a time. And I can't really speak to you in general terms because everybody grows up under different circumstances. I grew up in a place downtown in Manhattan called Little Italy, right in the middle of the 20th century. Second, let me see if I can. There you are. Okay. Right in the middle, 1950, 100 years ago. And that world, my circumstances where I grew up, they're completely gone now. It's ancient history. Doesn't exist. In many ways, it was a tough place, a tough life. Marked me for life, that's for sure. But I didn't just live it and experience it and survive it. I kind of watched, remembered the way people moved and spoke, the way it all felt, the emotions, the undercurrents, the light, the lack of light, the windows, the hallways, all the dramas, the tragedies, and the comedy. It filled me with this passion that kept growing and became a real drive to tell stories, to tell their stories, those stories, and my story, somehow. But the problem was, I found that the only way I could express myself that I felt most comfortable with, the only way of telling these stories that I imagined was through moving pictures, And where I came from, back then particularly, there was no way to be able to do that. No equipment, no connections, no family, nothing. You just it was an impossibility. Now today, of course, you can make pictures with your iPhones, which some terrific filmmakers are doing, by the way. But to us, if you said an iPhone, that would be science fiction at that time, really. And as far as Hollywood is concerned, it was unthinkable, unthinkable. So I had this crazy drive, you know. And since making movies are absolutely impossible, my life began to veer toward a very different path. I was inspired by this priest who became a true mentor, a real street priest. And I wanted to follow him and become a priest. And I tried. But I found out quickly that I wasn't cut out for it. And I was invited to leave the seminary. Quickly. And I was adrift for the next few years. But the interesting thing was that at the same time, the world around me was changing. You started to see different films from all over the world, different cultures, different ways of telling stories with pictures and sound, different influences from everywhere, all very available. And it opened up the world to me through cinema. It opened up the world to reading, to music, everything, dance. And there was this new shooting equipment. It got very light and very accessible, and it was actually available. You didn't have to get giant cameras and be in studios. And this crazy idea of making movies kind of it seemed a little more possible. And so I took a chance, a really big chance, and I was able to get into a school that offered film courses, and ultimately I started making films there. Now, when you're starting out doing what you want to do, you experience something very important. It's even precious. Failure. Okay? Now, I'm not telling you to go out and fail. And I'm not saying that it's going to feel good when you do, because it won't. But I will tell you that it's precious, because failure can be a great teacher if you let it. That is, if you give yourself the grace to fail, pick yourself up, start over. You learn when you start over. When I'm making a picture, for instance, there's a big pre-production period where we're looking at locations and a lot of rehearsals, we hope, with actors, we hope. And with the actors, I always say, there's no such thing as a bad idea in the rehearsal. Actually, there is, but don't tell them that. So I said, there's no such thing as a bad idea. Try anything, do anything to find what we're looking for. And ultimately, out of that, this kind of process occurs. And I got to tell you, it's interesting. Each time it's different. And that means I learn each time, they learn. We all relearn each time. There isn't just one way or two ways of doing it. In fact, I found that every movie I make is a lesson. Every day is like a final exam when I'm making a movie. And with by the way, a lot of trick questions. And I have to ask, when they ask me a question, I say, is this a trick question? You know? Every day is a re-education. That's why being here, talking to you today, I feel like we're like travelers talking to each other quickly. You're on the way out, and I'm on the way back in again, because I'm trying to finish this movie that I shot a few months ago. It's going to take another year, I think. And at the same time, I'm starting to prepare another. And at the same time, trying to do a nonprofit, no, it's certainly, in my case, it's nonprofit, a nonfiction musical documentary at the same time. Always relearning, because it never stops. And for this reason, I've always felt that the term education is misleading, because it implies something finite. Like, you've been educated, now go. And what we refer to as education, I think, should really be called an introduction to knowledge, because it never stops. It never stops. Now, I want to be clear, a lot of what I'm saying applies to those of you who are trying to do what you need to do, what you're burning to do. Now, if you think, oh, you know, this seems like a good idea, I think I like that, seems like fun. Or if you say, hey, this looks easy, I'm going to try that. You know, I run into people all the time who say, I want to make movies, or I want to be in the movie business. And I ask them, really? I said, do you want to make a film? Do you want to say something? Or you just want to be famous? Because the thing is that everything worth doing what burns within you, what you need to do, is a struggle. But it's always a struggle worth having. So you need to be in touch with your desire, your vision. You have it already, it's there, all of you. You just have to access it. And there might be people along the way who can help you. You feel your way through it. Sometimes you gravitate towards some people more than others. People who seem to know in some way who you are or what you're aiming for. Again, that's what makes this time so special. You know, your parents hopefully will always be there to help you, but it's a different kind of support and guidance you need when you're trying to make your own way. Like for me, I found it with this priest, then with a teacher at college, and then with a filmmaker or two. But the important thing to understand when this happens, if it does, this is about what you need, not what they need. It's not about supporting their egos, these guides. It's about nourishing yours. So since Francesca came to Masters, I have seen the change in her, and I know that she's found teachers here that have given her something invaluable and lasting. They've given her, I believe, a true introduction to knowledge. I feel that generosity of spirit, that reciprocity that happens with learning, because the greatest learning experiences are reciprocal. The secret is the teacher learns as much as the student. And that's why I've always thrived in contact with young people. Because like when Francesca was growing up, we would show her movies, you know, my mother and myself, a couple of her friends. And as she grew older, the movies, I slipped in some special pictures. And we got past all that animated stuff first, you know. Then we started slipping in different kinds of pictures. And now these are pictures I'd seen many times myself. But it was as if I was seeing them again really for the first time, because they were all new to her and her friends. And she was seeing them with new eyes. And that gave me the gift of seeing them in a new light. It just doesn't end. Learning doesn't end, kids. Teaching becomes learning, one and the same, an ongoing exchange, mutually nurturing. As I said, I'm trying to finish this, also a nonfiction music film, I think it is, a documentary possibly about Bob Dylan. It's my second one, in fact, about Bob Dylan. My first was called No Direction Home. It was made some years ago, about 5, 6, 8 years ago maybe. You can see it on Netflix. You can see everything on Netflix. And my new film, The Irishman, is Netflix. This film is Netflix too. So it's the second one. It's about his Rolling Thunder Review, which was a musical tour he did some while back. This tour was a kind of crazy musical poetic caravan through the deepest America, an exploration of freedom, its sadness, America's sadness, its beauty, its wildness. And this was during a celebration of the bicentennial of America. America was 200 years old. This was 1976. A lot of this footage is from that time. And Dylan brought along the poet Allen Ginsberg. Allen Ginsberg, of course, you might know, is one of our great writers. You might know him by the poem Howl, the famous opening line, I saw the best minds of my generation destroyed by madness. That's just the first line. And then Dylan, if you don't know Dylan, I don't know how to describe it. Singer, songwriter, poet, kind of American visionary, huh? But Ginsberg had a huge effect on Dylan. And when they got to know each other, the line between the teacher and the student disappeared. You can see it in the film once we get this together. I think you can see it in that footage. And near the beginning of our film, called The Rolling Thunder Review, Dylan says something about, people keep asking me, I'm going to go find myself. I'm going to find myself. He said, you don't find yourself. You create yourself. And he's right. There's no preformed me with a disguise or a mask you can put on. You create yourself. And then, if you're lucky, you get to recreate yourself a number of times in your life. Now, near the end of the picture, there's a moment where Allen Ginsberg addresses the camera and enlarges this thought. Now, he's speaking about this whole Rolling Thunder adventure, this crazy caravan that had gone on for like a year and a half in different cities around America. And he's talking to you, all of us. And he speaks extemporaneously in language that is truly exalted. You who saw it all, he says, or saw flashes and fragments, take from us some example. Try to get yourselves together, clean up your act, find your community, pick up on some kind of redemption of your own consciousness, become more mindful of your own friends, your own work, your own proper meditation, your own proper art, your own beauty. Go out and make it for your own eternity. So go, and God bless.